Welcome to the Writer's Journey podcast. I'm Michael Laran, a science fiction and fantasy author on a journey to go from nobody to bestseller, and I'm documenting every step of the way. Tune in every week as I pull back the curtain on my writing life and how I'm building a writing career while working a full-time job, raising a family, and attending law school classes in the evenings. You can find show notes for this week's episode, a free starter library of my fiction, and much more at michaellaran.com. Hello and welcome to episode 89. It is the week before Thanksgiving, at least here in the United States, and things are going great for me. I titled the name of this episode 3 Minutes Later. Now, you're going to have to wait longer than 3 minutes to find out what that means, but I hope that there will be a kind of meta thing going on in this episode. I'm going to do an experiment. We're going to see if it actually works or if it doesn't work. It's going to be kind of fun. So in this podcast, I was almost going to say video. I've been shooting author level up videos, so that's what happens when I do both at the same time. So I wanted to give some updates on how things are going with me. So I kind of realized that I've only got 2 weeks left of class. So I actually have only 3 classes left. I've got, as I record this, I've got a class on Thursday, and then I've got 1 class next week, and then I don't have class for Thanksgiving week Thursday, and then I have 1 class after that, which I think is only going to be a few minutes. So really, I only have 2 classes left, and so that feels really good. I'm 2 weeks away from the final, which is going to be exactly the same as the midterm. I think there might be a couple more scenarios that I have to do. So I'm really, really looking forward to this light at the end of the tunnel. So I'm excited about that. And other news, I got the Ally book done. So I've been working on a book for the Alliance of Independent Authors. I got it done, and it feels good. I've gone through it and kind of revised it, and it didn't take me very long. Overall, the entire production time took me 19 days, which I think is pretty impressive. It ended up being about a 40,000 word book. And there were some things that were a little bit different about this book. It's a question and answer format, so it was a little bit easier to write. And also there is a pretty robust resources section at the end of the book. And I also had to do, the 19 days also includes a number of things that I had to do, like market research. I had to write the book description and do keyword research and AMS ads. So essentially, as you record this, I will have delivered the book to Ally already. So basically kind of delivered it to where it's just pretty simple. All they have to do is edit it, get that cover designed, and I've got a document that has all of the metadata that they can use. So the exact title, exact subtitle, the exact book description, and all they have to do is copy and paste it, right? And if they want to change some of that, then we can have that conversation. So overall, very happy with how that went. So I think I don't know that I'll ever be in a position where I have to work with a traditional publisher, but you kind of want to make people's lives as easy as possible. So to try to do a little bit of that stuff up front is helpful. So the book is going to have 150 top self-publishing questions. It's going to be written in my usual tone, which is pretty conversational. It's kind of like having coffee with a friend. And I'm also planning to narrate the audiobook. So my computer is just cursing me right now. It's the worst computer I've ever bought. I know I complain about this every single episode, but I really, really cannot stand this MacBook Air that I have right now. And so I just found out that Apple released a new 16-inch MacBook Pro that apparently is really good. All the reviewers are loving it. So that's what I'm going to be buying in about 4 weeks. I cannot wait. In fact, I would buy it now, but because of tax things, my accountant said I better wait 4 weeks. So I'm going to have to wait. But anyway, I'm going to be narrating the audiobook once I have a better computer that the fan noise isn't going to be as big of a problem. I need a CPU that can kind of keep up with some of the things that I'm doing. And so I'm going to record audiobooks for this. It won't be the first audiobook I record because I don't want this to be my first time at bat. I'll probably do the audiobook for Mental Models for Writers first, and then I'll kind of figure that out, get the kinks worked out, and then I'll do the Indie Authors Encyclopedia, and then I'll get the kinks worked out. And then I think by that point, I would hope that my narration skills are just a little bit better for this book. But I do think that having a book narrated by the author is a pretty big selling point for nonfiction. And I also think that because my other nonfiction does pretty well in audio, I think this book will also do pretty well because it will be under my name. So it'll be able to play off of that strength, and then it'll also be able to play off of the strength that Ally has, which in the community. So that is that. So I've actually already moved on to my next project. So I've realized that I've been putting off my email list and my email newsletter for too long. And as part of my marketing strategy, my goal is to refocus on that by sending out monthly newsletters next year. So I would like to have that, have some helpful advice, have some things. I need to be better about promoting a lot of the content that I've created. And so a newsletter, I think, is going to be a smart way to do that. I actually, I've been studying some newsletters, and I've encountered a few that they do a really good job that I'm going to try to adopt a similar format where they're very short newsletters, but there's advice, but then there's also links to recent content that they've created, which I think just makes sense given all the stuff that I do on a weekly basis. How do I find a way to disseminate that out, right? So the only problem with my email list, it's a problem that I've had for a long time, but I've just been kicking this can down the road. So I have an email list today for Author Level Up. I've got one. There's not that many people on it. I was a lot more active on it in earlier years, but the bigger problem is that I don't have a good lead magnet. And I've never really had a good lead magnet. I think when I first started Author Level Up, I used to have, it was like a 3-video course on how to create rockstar ebooks. And a number of people signed up for the email list because of that. And I think they liked it. I think overall the entire course was about 45 minutes, which people found helpful. They enjoyed. It was a helpful thing for me because I'd never done like a course before, so that was my first true course. So it was a little rough around the edges, but it worked. But I think it was a little clunky in terms of how I did it. And so then after that, I kind of retired that. And then I had some resource guide PDFs that I tried. I think one of them was like the author's roadmap or something like that. And then I had one on, I think it was, I don't remember what it was, but people email me to ask for it every once in a while because I think I've got some rogue links out there. But I pulled them up again, and I just didn't like how they read. They just didn't look very good. So I decided to create something different, and I decided to try to create something a little bit more evergreen that fit in with some of the course offerings and some of the things that I'm planning on. And so I decided to create a newer lead magnet. And basically, I decided, you know what, I'm not going to just decide how to do this willy-nilly out of the blue. I'm going to decide with the help of my audience, right? So I've got people that follow me and pay attention to what I'm doing. And so I can get pretty good feedback on my YouTube community tab. So what I did was I went on my YouTube community tab, and I said to my audience, hey, here's what I'm thinking. I want to create an email newsletter. If you had never heard of me before, which of these lead magnets would intrigue you the most? And so I gave them a couple of options. The first one was fiction formulas. So like a swipe file, but for fiction, like techniques that you can instantly import into your fiction to write better fiction. And then I also had the option of a speed writing guide. So a lot of people ask me how to write faster. So would you want a lead magnet that teaches you some secrets on how to write faster? So maybe some things I haven't talked about publicly. Or would you want a guide to writer's block, how to beat writer's block? And it was a very close competition. The one that I thought would win, and this is why I'm glad I asked somebody, the one I thought would win was writer's block. But writer's block came in third. The one so there was a tie. It was almost tie. So it was very, very close, like razor thin between the fiction formulas and speed reading or speed writing. And so I decided to ask Twitter to break the tie. And people voted on YouTube, and then people voted on Twitter, and fiction formulas won by like a margin of like 2 or 3 people. And I had, I think, about 125 people that voted. So pretty good feedback, right? So that was pretty good to know that, my audience doesn't want to hear about writer's block as much. right? Because maybe I've developed resources that help them with that. And so fiction formula is one. I came up with an idea that I've had for a while, which is how do you take advanced writing techniques, that are used by the mega bestsellers like Stephen King, John Grisham, Nora Roberts, Danielle Steele. How do you take some of the advanced things that they're doing on the page, and then how do you visualize it? And then how do you break it down to where it is very practical, right? So weird tangent. So I took a course about a year ago on video creation, and there was a guy who taught it. His name is Anthony Q. Artis. Phenomenal instructor. I took it on lynda.com, and he basically teaches you everything you want to know about creating good, solid videos, right? So I used that to help me rebrand, author level up, so on and so forth. Anyway, so he has a saying I absolutely love. And, there was one video where he was talking about, well, if you're editing your video, there are academics out there that will tell you, your video needs to be this and has to have these specifications, and you've got to do this on your set. And he basically said, I'm not an academic. I'm a pracademic, So I've co-opted that phrase. I'm a pracademic. I'm not an academic. I'm a pracademic, right? So when I'm talking about fiction techniques, I don't care about the philosophical, this is how your novel should be conceptually, none of that crap, How do you create practical writing advice? So what I did was I created a lead magnet, and I'm calling it the Writing Craft Playbook, Volume 1. And it's 20 fiction and nonfiction tricks to keep your readers in the zone. So I had some fun with this. You got to have fun with lead magnets, right? I mean, you can't just, buy my or download my, stodgy looking ebook like a lot of people do. You got to try to have some fun. So it was a reference to U.S. football. So, I don't watch a whole lot of football, but I have a lot of friends that do. And so I was like, well, this kind of needs a theme. This kind of needs to be a little bit of fun. And so while I was researching, I came across an image of a playbook. And if you've ever seen a U.S. football playbook, they're intensely complicated. Like you look at them and it's like, what is this? All these O's and X's and arrows. And I was like, well, playbooks are kind of difficult to read if you've never seen them before, but they're great examples of strategy. So I thought that this would be a fun theme for the book, right? It's not secrets or it's not tips. It's not what you would typically expect. It's a little bit different, right? It's a little bit different packaging. So this is truly a proof of concept, and I wanted to create something valuable that you wouldn't be able to find anywhere else. So in it, you'll learn writing craft techniques used by bestsellers. Each chapter is a blueprint to the craft. Each chapter is concise, and it includes a step-by-step guide on exactly what to do in order to replicate the exact same writing techniques that best-selling authors are using that I have observed as a pretty analytical reader over the years. And it's going to be available this week. So you can get your copy at authorlevelup.com/fan club. So it's not available just yet. It'll be available over the weekend. But if you join my mailing list, you get on the list. Everyone who's currently on the list or everyone who will be on the list at the time I send it, I'm going to broadcast it out to the whole list. So, wow, that was really wordy. You know what I meant to say. So I'm really excited about that because it's going to finally give me a lead magnet that will let me try to build a meaningful mailing list because it just hasn't been a focus. So anyway, you can get your copy of that at authorlevelup.com/fan club. So in my last episode, I talked about a concept that I had talked about after therapy. I talked about lighthouses and amusement parks. You can go back and listen to that in the prior episode. But when I'm writing my nonfiction, what I was talking about is how can I create lighthouse content that shines a light on the rocks of the writing life. And when I'm writing fiction, how can I create amusement park content? Meaning, how can I create something fun that helps readers leave their troubles at the door? And so this is a thought that I've been having, and I talked about it with my therapist, and she really liked the idea. She thought it was interesting in terms of, what's my life purpose, right? Or what is the purpose of a writer, and what is the impact that a writer has in the world? And I think that it's lighthouse and amusement park content. And so anyway, I have a leader at work who is an executive, and I happened to be able to get in front of her a couple times and working on a couple projects with her. And I asked if she'd be interested in mentoring me because I admire her and respect her, and she said yes. And so anytime I have a mentor, and I've had a number of mentors over the years, some of them have been executives, some of them have been other leaders, I always ask if there's any books that they have read that have made an impact on them, right? I think it's just one, it honors their experience, and then I find that it also makes the conversations that you have with them a little bit more meaningful. And so she sent me an email with 2 book recommendations. One of them was a book called Leader's Legacy, or A Leader's Legacy, and you can look it up if you want. I haven't read it, so I won't recommend it just yet. But the reason I bring this up is because I about fell out of my chair when I saw the cover of the book. So you know how sometimes the universe acts in mysterious ways, like it sends you these weird signals to confirm that you're potentially on the right path. At least maybe that's just me, it's my perspective. But every once in a while, there's some things happen, and it's where it's like, all right, is this a coincidence or is it like fate? So on the cover of this book, I'm pulling it up on Amazon, and on the cover of this book, I kid you not, was a lighthouse. I cannot make this up. And this was the even weirder thing about this was that it was about 3 to 4 days after this podcast episode went live. Last week's podcast episode went live. So like I was literally just talking about lighthouses, and then I get a mentor who recommends me a book about lighthouses. Now, did my mentor listen to my podcast? I don't think she probably has that kind of time. Maybe it's coincidence, maybe it's not. But I always just think that's just so funny. It's just super coincidental. So anyway, I'll report back on whether there are any similarities on what this book recommends. It could be something totally different. I have no idea. But yeah, I thought it was funny. I always thought that those kind of things are worth sharing. So anyway, I wanted to spend the balance of this episode talking about a book that I found that I do want to share with you, particularly if you are a writer. Now, I'm sure you've probably heard people recommend you books all the time, right? There's no shortage of writing books out there. But I found, at least with marketing books, there are not very many marketing books out there for writers that are, be careful how I say this, there are not very many marketing books out there that are, one, for writers, and then two, that can create meaningful results for writers. I mean, I think a lot of writing books or marketing books on the market do a good job of explaining the concepts, and they do a good job of taking marketing concepts that businesses use and then apply those to writers. But I found in my own experience and in talking to other people that the books just don't always hit home. Like they say, we're going to help you do this and this and this, and the ideas are sound, but they don't always translate into results for writers. And so I'm always on the lookout for new books from other industries, because I found that this concept of liquid knowledge, I think, is so true, right? You learn something that someone does on another side, on another industry, and then you bring that into writing. The only thing you have to do is figure out how to translate it, right? I mean, there are going to be some things that don't quite work, but the overall idea of it is pretty sound. And so that's why when I want to learn something new, I typically don't buy writing books first. In terms of like non-writing stuff, like if it's business or marketing, I typically go outside of the industry first, and then I bring that back into the writing, because I just find that sometimes it helps me think differently, right? And so I was listening to a podcast episode last week, one of my favorite podcasts, The Unmistakable Creative. Check it out if you have not heard it. The interviews are phenomenal. You never know what you're going to get. And it's always interviews with creatives, so it's not just interviews with people out there. It's interviews with people who are doing something creative with their lives. And so I was listening to an episode last week, and it was an interview with a TV producer who was talking about how to pitch almost anything. And he was talking about the methods that he used to create shows like The Biggest Loser. He also created some pretty famous reality shows here in the United States. And the guy's name is Brant Pinvidic. I hope I said his last name correctly. And the book that he was promoting as a part of this podcast was called The 3-Minute Rule, which is his method of pitching anything. So the main point of the book is that 3 minutes is the optimal time that you need to make a pitch to someone. So if you think about any book you've read, it generally takes about 3 minutes to describe it to another person. And what I've just done is I've just started the clock to see if I'm going to get to this 3 minutes while I'm describing it to you. So if you keep your pitch succinct and clear, you can say less, win more clients, and you'll improve the chances of winning the sale. So Brant walks through the step-by-step process that he's used to pitch high-powered network executives. And if you can pitch to them and win, you can pitch to just about anybody. And honestly, I've read a lot of marketing books, and I expected the book to be decent because the guy gave a great podcast interview, and you usually know when someone writes a pretty good book, right? But I didn't expect for this to be one of the best books on marketing that I've ever read, and I don't say that lightly. So I've always found copywriting and book descriptions very difficult to write. And if you think about those are really no more than pitches, right? I've actually found them to be pretty agonizing. And I think a lot of writers would say that. And there are a lot of great resources out there. Brian Meeks does a fantastic job of teaching copywriting. There are a lot of good copywriting courses out there. But I've always found that there's just still that little gap. It's like, well, what are the actual steps? How do I actually codify this, and how do I do it every time to where I can get a book description that I like, as opposed to just learning copywriting principles and trying to agonize my way through it. And so Brant's book, I think, is the clearest example of a marketer sharing their actual thought process of brainstorming ideas and clarifying them into powerful marketing statements that connect with your audience. And when I say that, I literally mean it. He walks you through step by step. So if you are one of those people that struggle with marketing like I do, this book is going to be a breath of fresh air. And he's not paying me to say that. So I followed and let me tell you why. So I followed the exact techniques in the book, and I got unbelievable results in writing my book description for the Ally book. In fact, I think it's one of the best and most creative descriptions that I've ever written. Will it convert? We'll see. Time will tell. But I walked away with a completely different perspective on marketing and pitching that I will be using in all of my products moving forward. So I will include a link to Brant's website and his book in the show notes, but I really hope that you go check it out. And we're going to time this here, and I don't know what this is going to be, but I'm going to look at the book or the clock just right about now and see if it took me 3 minutes to describe this book. That's all I had for this week. I hope that wherever you are, you're having a great week. And if you're a writer, I hope you're having a great National Novel Writing Month. And just a quick public service announcement that if you want to listen to my other podcast, Writing Tip of the Day, I have a bunch of NaNoWriMo tips for the month of November. So you can check that out at authorlevelup.com/writing tip of the day. I almost forgot my own link there. So anyway, peace out, and I'll talk to you next week. Thanks for joining me this week. If you enjoyed this episode, you'll enjoy my backlist episodes at michaelaran.com/podcast. For your free starter library of my favorite novels, join my fan club by visiting michaelaran.com/fanclub. If you're a writer and want to connect with me further, check out my YouTube channel, Author Level Up, for helpful writing advice at authorlevelup.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll be back next week.